I shouted Shaku. Okay, shouted it yesterday even we were doing a promo, eh?
Oh, yeah.
So, Shaku Maku.
And the continuation will continue on Public Square with Rotimi Sankore and Ayobe all the way until the senators say we don't tire. Hopefully, probably, this is the last day of the process. It's been a very interesting 3 days. But so far, the Senate...
Wait, Sandra, did you say last day of the process?
Hopefully. That's why I said hopefully, probably now. Hopefully, probably. But the Senate has approved every single one of the president's nominees. Quite a number of them have been simply told to take a bow without getting any questions from the Senate. We're not going to have any guests on this segment. Now, usually if it's a Friday and you are a huge listener of Hard Facts, you know that we're telling you one big story on the global front away from Nigeria. And my goodness, so much is going on all over the world.
Boris Boom 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 Johnson, eh?
So much is going on all over the world.
Boris Johnson will know how far by October. All those who've been praising "This is my job" viral video will know whether this is his job. but that's a discussion Baba would have loved to have. But,
yes. And then you go to America. Mueller is also in the conversation. You go to North Korea. There's something huge happening over there. You go to Liberia. Something huge happening over there.
I'm missiles from King.
So there's so much happening all over the world, but something even bigger is happening in Nigeria. In Nigeria, ministers nominated by the president are being screened. Well, ministerial nominees, they're not ministers until they're screened, except for the ones who have been confirmed. Now, we're going to do a few things for the next couple of minutes, right? We've got how many minutes, Aghogho?
We got, by the time we take the ads, we'll have in all maybe about 30 minutes.
There's no ads until 4.
Okay, fantastic. So we have about
39 minutes. So 39 minutes, and we're going to just have that conversation that I said we're going to have yesterday, but we couldn't have it because of the screening. And that conversation is about broken government and what you would be doing differently regarding ministers if you were the Senate or the president. We've been covering this ministerial confirmation for 2 days. I was with you all of yesterday for 3 days. I was with you all of yesterday. I was with you all of the day before. And today I'll be with you for a few more minutes. And the whole time we've been asking, what do you think? And most of you are not satisfied. Most of you are unhappy. You keep saying this is not how our leaders should be chosen. Aghogho, when you leave the studio and have conversations with people at home or in the streets, what's the feel? What are you getting?
So I've had the opportunity to see a number of ministerial screenings beginning the Fourth Republic
99.
So the dynamics have changed a little bit. We're no longer hearing accusations or allegations of money passing, behind or in front before people go for screening and all of those talk that used to
dominate
the discussion when they happen. We've gone past the point where people could not recite the second stanza of the national anthem or even the pledge, to the more ridiculous now, which is taking a bow and go, which most of the comments have revolved around. And the fact that there's no clear definition of what it should be who takes a bow, whether it's a member of the National Assembly or whether it's someone who's been loyal to the party, like it did happen with Rotimi Amechi, and then I came out the other member who had to go there, and he said because his brother was a member of the National Assembly, so he is a member of the National Assembly by affinity. I don't understand what that means. Or the women, where the National Assembly has claimed that they love the women, so they would rather not let them be grilled or screened to show their support. They take a bow and go to. So all of that has brought a lot of comments I've seen on both sides. But otherwise, I do not know. I believe definitely, and people have asked questions whether, I listened to Tunji Andrew in the other session when he said he had to go find out exactly what the screening was about, whether our lawmakers have the capability to screen and grill. And I've seen them in action. I've seen them grill ministers to the point where...
We saw them grill Sunday Dare now.
Remember when former President Goodluck Jonathan was media chat, and then he said that he accused the National Assembly of legislative recklessness because they always wanted to interview his ministers. He said, if you call a minister 100 times to come before you to be grilled, I mean, she's going to have to do her work. In reference to Dezen Alice Madueke, the Minister of Petroleum, shunning invitations from the National Assembly. So they have the capability to grill. I've seen them in action before, but Why the most important
We saw them in action yesterday. If you watch Sunday Diary's screening, it was quite intense. It went on for a long time, and there were questions coming from all corners of the room. It was impressive. It was so impressive that the listeners were asking, why didn't we do this for every single person? Especially for people who were returning. So you had the Rotimi Amechis, you have people who are former governors, you have the finance minister. Why didn't we do this same thing for the executive commissioner of the NCC with all the other nominees?
Case in point, Abubakar Malami, controversial his time at there's several pointers. Was it the the NBA conference where the president was famously reported, or we heard him say that national security trumped national security trumped rule of law, comment, and people were not exactly sure what to make of it. So many other things that happened with people being detained and all of that. And he sort of just shimmied his way past a number of those questions that were thrown there. For the 40 minutes, Abubakar Malami was up taking questions from members of the National Assembly. Now,
Abubakar Malami was the former Justice Minister. We need to say that, yes.
And there's a lot of talk about what exactly we expect from him, because one of the three areas Malami, which was an opportunity for us to assess what he did, the pivotal areas the president said he will focus in his first term, which included corruption and what his role was. So, that would have provided the vantage opportunity to say, well, this is what we're doing. This is how we're going to go. Will the bills that we submit before the Assembly not face an embarrassing situation where half of those bills are rejected by the president? And you, as Attorney General, what sort of advice did you give to the president for those bills that were rejected? None of that was answered by Malami.
Well, Senator Baribe asked him about court orders, and Malami said, yes, he disobeyed some orders, but he did so because the individual rights of the persons in question were not as important as national interests. He made that statement, quite controversial. People on social media cannot get enough of that statement that he made. Now, Malami acknowledged that in the interest of national interest, that was more important than individual rights. Malami used the case of federal government versus Asari Dokubo as his justification, and some people agree with him. They say that in that case, the Supreme Court said that holding Asari Dokubo in detention was in the national interest. But you have people who disagree with that, and they say that the Supreme Court verdict was on Asari's matter specifically. And the Attorney General cannot use it to disobey court orders in general. After all, before government got the right to hold Asari, they went to court. And a lot of Nigerians are also concerned about the Attorney General saying that he can disobey any court order if he believes that it is in the national interest. The question now becomes, Aghogho, who decides the national interest?
So one big question, which I did not hear from the senators today, never mind the aftermath after Malami was asked to come out and go, that maybe he could have been grilled more. I think maybe the questions should have been more directed towards him in the way they expected him to answer the critical questions, and they decide among themselves. That's the president of the Senate, who is also the chairman of the screening committee and the approval, saying these are the questions I think are pertinent that Malami should answer. For example, the part about people saying, separate the Minister of Justice from the Attorney General of the Federation, which remains a very contentious issue because of the thinking that whoever is the Minister of Justice, on the one hand, has been seen over and over again in the role former Attorney Generals like Michael Andoka, when he was Attorney General, or Mohammed Adoke, who did write advisories when Nigeria was pursuing corruption cases, saying that we were no longer interested in those cases, saying this was the interest of the government. And people said, but you, the Attorney General of the Federation, in both cases should have pursued it in the overall public interest. But we haven't been able to yet see that Attorney General who's been able to differentiate between both positions in saying this is how we're going to, and this is the opinion for many of the legal observers. So I'm sure it's something we're going to talk about a lot more on Public Square with Aghogho, who's a jurist, lawyer, and can handle and think about how those things play out in the long run.
But something I need to mention is what some of these ministries do. So let's talk about the Ministry of Justice, because Abubakar Malami was on the Senate floor today. And we've been saying that he was the Justice Minister. He's the AGF, or he was the AGF in the first term. He's been renominated. So Justice Ministry, quite important. It has a very simple role. It enforces the law by representing the executive in court. The executive, of course, is the presidency, right? When the law enforcement agencies like the police arrest people for crimes, the Justice Ministry coordinates prosecution. When anybody violates agreements with the government, the Attorney General sues them. When government is sued, the Attorney General represents government in court. So whenever the courts give an order to government, it is usually the AGF who hears it and either acts on it or communicates it to the relevant office in government. So you can see how when Malami got a bit of grilling today over his time as AGF, and he's asked about obeying court orders, and he answers and says that he ignores these things because sometimes national interest was more important than individual rights. It raises a lot of concern amongst Nigerians who heard that. But perhaps it's not the same for you. I'm curious what you would say to that, to be very honest with you. Do you think, and here's a question that you can call us and answer right now. Do you think let me rephrase that question. Who has the right to decide when it is in the national interest? The general, the Attorney General, or the court? Do you agree with Malami that he has a right to disobey court orders? Who has the right to decide when it is in the national interest? The Attorney General or the court? Let's get into that conversation for a bit and then move on to the main meat of the rest of the hour. 01277 0993, 01277 1993, 01277 2993, and 01277 3993. I have to mention that we're streaming this conversation on Facebook, so leave us comments as well and send tweets at Nigeria Info FM. Facebook is also Nigeria Info FM, and WhatsApp is 080-959-75805. Who has the right to decide when it is in the national interest? The Attorney General or the court? Do you agree with Malami that he has a right to disobey court orders? Right. Let's see who we can talk to.
Okay. Let me see who we can pick out of Akin or Salvation. Let me go for Salvation. So we.
You failed.
My religious. All right, Akin. Hello.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm Afam from Alimoto.
Say that again. Afam.
Yeah, from Alimoto.
Okay, sorry for calling you Akin. Then please go ahead.
Madam Sandra, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Welcome to the show.
I'm following your line of thought. Who has the right to decide what court order should obey? The Attorney General. One thing you will fail to understand about Nigeria is that we always compare Nigeria with other countries. Hey, Larry has taken power. Yeah, just out of office over 2 months. No ministerial appointment. You liken it to South Africa, liken it to UK. How many does South Africa have? UK, how many ethnic groups do we have in UK? Until we begin to practice what works for us in this country, we will keep running in circles. There is no country in this world that can be like Nigeria. And Nigeria can never be like any other country in the world.
How many ethnic groups does India have? India was able to do theirs in 3 days. India is 1 billion people, and they were able to have their own ministerial list out in 3 days.
Is there a ministerial list or commissioner's list? Does it have any time bound?
Not constitutionally, no.
Good. Nigeria are shouting Buhari. How many of the 26 governors have appointed their commissioners?
Lagos has.
Lagos has only sent them for screening, which has not been done.
Okay, but at least he has sent a list. You said how many he has, and I'm giving you Lagos.
Lagos, how many again? Out of 26.
I'll have to find out. I mean, Lagos, I can tell you about Lagos.
They are less than 3 out of 26.
Okay.
They have less than 3.
Okay.
So this issue, will come over a technocrat. Who is a technocrat in Nigeria? We've had technocrats in government. What happened? Former rural minister, he was a technocrat. What happened? Was our life better off? I think we should actually give this government...
I'm trying to understand your point, Afam. What's your point?
My
Do
point
not hold
is
government accountable? Allow government to be mediocre?
The state has the right to decide which court order to obey or not.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Nigeria is burning today. You refer everybody pushes the whole blame to the president. Is it not?
The state decides. The state decides which court order to obey or not. All right, Afam.
Exactly.
Afam,
right.
thank you for calling and sharing your thoughts.
Thank you, Afam. Hello.
Interesting.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon, Akin.
Oh, this is Akin now.
Thank you.
Great.
Ogun State.
From Ogun State. Okay, good. How's Ogun State today? Where in Ogun State are you calling from?
I'm calling from Attorney Winners.
Okay, great. Please go ahead.
In a case against Asari Dokubo and the federal government, it's as if we are narrating it in the wrong way. Asari Dokubo was being held by the federal government. They now took the government to court from the lower court up to the Supreme Court for its release, where the Supreme Court now gave the verdict that in the case of, how will I put it, for the security of the nation, that your human rights will have to be shifted aside. That was the verdict.
Yeah, but that verdict was specifically for Asari.
But he was held before they took the government to court. Not that the Supreme Court asked them to hold him. He was being held right from the lower court up to the Supreme Court until when the Supreme Court gave that verdict.
Okay.
They were challenging the federal government then. So the government was holding him without any judgment. And the case went from the lower court up to the Supreme Court before the Supreme Court gave that verdict.
Right.
So what does that mean? To me, I think Malami is right.
Okay.
If the state sees you as a security listing to the safety of the country, they have the right. The father of democracy today, they have a base where they keep them. Really, they claim that it's not in U.S., but that is a fallacy. How many inmates are there? Maybe they've been threatening to close that place down. Why did they shut it down?
Akin, you're saying that the federal government can decide which of your rights, which of Akin's rights are not as important as national interest.
Excuse me, I am not saying Akin's right.
No.
If you are a troublemaker.
Again, how do you know how you become a troublemaker? Akin, how do you know when you become a troublemaker? Who decides what national interest is?
Excuse me. Any verdict given by the Supreme Court is seen as a law in this country today. Is that understood? Or am I right there? Any verdict given by the Supreme Court automatically is seen as as the Constitution until it is set aside. So who has set that judgment aside? Up till now, none. So it stands.
Okay.
Thank you and God bless you.
Akin, thank you for calling. Interesting. This is very different from what you're seeing on social media. Quite the thing. It's almost like Twitter is this different ball game, because on Twitter you're hearing very, very different opinions than I've heard from Akin and Afam.
Yeah, well, it's the multiplicity, rather, multiplarity of viewpoints you will get. So it's a different crowd. But let's see whether Ziggy agrees or disagrees. Hello, Ziggy. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Ziggy. I'm calling from Aghogho State.
Go ahead, Ziggy.
All right. There is a caller before now. There is an impression I want to correct first. China is 1.8 billion people, and they organize their government within 2 days. And they have more than 200 or more than even 500 ethnic groups in China. It's a place I know very well. I know the terrain, and I know a lot about China. but they can organize whatever they are doing.
I like the way you say, Ziggy, 500 ethnic groups, or one ethnic group be like over 90% of the population.
You are 100%. The people in Guangzhou is completely different with the people in Shaoxing. The people in Shaoxing is completely different with people in Beijing. True. The people in Kocha is different with the people. I like how you said that, Kocha. Yeah, with the people in Hangzhou. Okay, it's a place I know very well, but they organize their country in less than 3 days. Okay, their government kick off in less than 4 days in whatever they are doing. Right. So we should stop celebrating mediocrity and begin to give excuses. Nigeria is so many. We are not anything. There are 1.8 billion people, and we are less than 200 million people. Right. So divide 1.8 billion people into how many, and you know how many percent we are. So we should stop celebrating mediocrity in this country.
Okay.
Okay. That is point number one.
Okay.
Point number two is this: the person who have every right to get anybody off the hook is the court. Okay? If Marami is telling us that him is the one who should determine who should be off the hook, there will be no court then. Why are they setting up court? He should be the one to stand. You are to go and you are not to go. This country is a country that should be governed by the rule of law. We have laws. And for us to make progress, we have to abide by our laws. Whenever any court of competent jurisdiction make any pronouncement or any judgment, the state should respect it. Okay? Because the state is for the people. They are not for themselves. Okay? So them telling us right now that they are the one who is to hold, I don't get it. That is to say they are disobeying the court order. So why are they the court in the first place? So some people should stop a kind of letting Nigerians to be celebrating mediocrity in every area, telling us that we have how many ethnic group. How many ethnic group are we have? There are people who have more than 100 how do I put it? More than 100,000 ethnic group, and they are organizing themselves. And we ourselves, how many are we?
Okay.
And we are taking all this.
All right.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. For
but
comments.
you know, Aghogho, I've heard legal luminaries talk about this national interest and court verdict matter, right? And even when they cite that Supreme Court verdict about Asari Dokubo, they talk about the Supreme Court itself using its power, not the AGF. The AGF is saying here, or said on the Senate floor, that it was him who could decide. And you know, if you're going by the comments I'm seeing on Facebook, people are fine with that. On Facebook, I have, for instance, a comment here from Olado Tuayomide, who says, I agree with Aking. Another person says the AGF can decide who can go free or not. Right. And we can argue whether or not the Supreme Court did the right thing by approving Asari's detention, but we cannot say that they gave that power to an AGF.
Which is the point I came to about separating the office of the Minister of Justice and the Attorney General of the Federation, which has been a real...
That verdict is being interpreted very widely.
Minister of Justice separate from the Attorney General of the Federation, maybe we'll have a different interpretation on what ways to go, and this close link between the Attorney General, Minister of Justice, and the executive, which puts him in a tricky position. Probably won't have it. But calls coming in, great comments on social media. To keep them coming in, Remy is calling from Makoka, has been on for a while. Remy, please go ahead.
Yeah, like I said, we did not debate this issue. The court determines who is guilty or who is not guilty. Okay, the case of Jones Abiri, he was locked up until the court gave an order. Okay, compared to the case of Jones Abiri to the case we are presently, the court determines who should be held behind bars. So I keep wondering why Leonard Fellow, who kept calling him, trying to justify impunity because of their support for a particular person. It sounds absurd. And I think if I'm to ask you guys, you have your answer. It is very, very glaring. The court determines who should be punished, who should be locked behind bars, who is against the security apparatus of this country. It's not an individual issue. He swore to uphold the law of the land. So I see no reason why he should be using his discretion to lock someone behind bars, all because he's against maybe a particular person's ideology, religious ideology, if I'm to say.
Well, thank you for calling. If you just joined us, we're having conversations about Malami, who was grilled today, former Minister of Justice. He said a few things on the floor of the Senate today that got him a lot of attention. I'm talking about Abubakar Malami, former AGF, former Minister of Justice. Senator Abaribe grilled him, asked him specifically about the courts ordering Malami to free people who were under arrest, and Malami ignoring them. And then Malami acknowledged that he disobeyed some orders but insisted that he was right to do so. Malami said national interest was more important than individual rights, and so when a court order on behalf of somebody's rights went against national interest, he ignored the order.
Yeah, very, very importantly too, I think the judgment debt for the federal government now has exceeded several billions, and I can't get the exact amount, but this administration probably has inherited a lot more maybe than previous administration. Very importantly also too, I remember it's during Malami's watch that you had the Boko Haram trial suspect. Many of them be held for about 7-8 years in detention, and they had those masked trials, and it did face a lot of condemnation. More than half of those numbers were found not guilty and had been held hostage. And the argument then, I remember very well when those mass trials happened sometime 2 years ago, was that it was the situation in town then. So the army did go in and just mop up an entire area. These were supposed to be suspects. And in national interest, they were kept for just being at the wrong place at the wrong time. So that's why many of them, and it was the same claim of national security. If one question was asked for the people who were released, whether they got any compensation for government for that for a year, there was nothing. We didn't get to find out whether there's going to be any explanation for those several thousands of people whose lives were, suspended and may never regain those lives back, because you can imagine being locked up in some Guantanamo Bay in quote for many years. Who are you going to go back to? You're going to face stigma from relatives and families. So indeed, there's the argument that the times we live in now, because of what Boko Haram has done in the Northeast, people can say we have a real national security question and anybody can be locked up under the guise of
yes, but back to the question I asked when we started, Aghogho, who determines what national interest is? Yeah. Somebody mentioned Jones Abiri, for instance, and one of the reasons given for why a journalist is still being incarcerated is national interest. It kind of smells like what used to happen when Nigeria was under the military. Does the AGF or any other official have the right to decide which court orders to obey? And can they decide which of your rights? Your name is Tope, your name is Michael, your name is Shola, your name is Temi, whatever your name is, can that person, the AGF or any other official, decide which of your rights are not as important as national interest? Yeah. We need to personalize it, then maybe we can better answer the question.
Well, very, very importantly also too, we need to look at what amendments have been made to the law. I remember just before former President Goodluck Jonathan was leaving office, and you have the Administration of Criminal Justice Act, which was amended. Many of those parts of that law sort of found ways of saying, for example, if people were kept in custody, you could find a way to make sure they did appear before a judge as quickly as possible. Expedited action, things, for example, where you had people held in jail for such a long period in time because motion after motion was being argued up to Supreme Court. You could have the trial happen just as that was going on. So has that been explored to the point to say, okay, this is what has happened, to allow a case drag on for so many years, like it happened with people like, what was his name, the former NSA to Sani Abacha, Hamza Mustafa, So it's an ongoing conversation, but let's talk to some more people. Salvation is advocating for the independence of the judiciary. Hello, Salvation.
Good evening, sir.
Good afternoon.
Oh, sorry, afternoon.
Yeah, please go ahead.
What I'm saying there is that if people are saying that federal government has right to decide who goes out free and who to be held, there's no need for law. That means. And what I'm advocating here is that what the minister has said, That's what even me, I'm expecting him to say this because of what? Because they have appointed him to the office. He have no decision of himself. Even him and including the CJN, all of them, they are just there to protect the interests of those people that appointed them to the office. They are not protecting any interest. That's why always I'm advocating, unless the judiciary have given their independence, that is, these countries are going nowhere. That's why always I'm advocating, and I'm standing on that always let the judiciary be given their independence. Let them decide who qualified to be in the office to appoint at that time through the judicial council to stop the let no any interference from the executive.
Say that again. To decide who becomes what?
Let the national
the
judicial council decide who will become either a minister of justice, that is the AG of the federation, and also the CJN, that is the Chief Justice of Nigeria, the person that will come. If not, all of them, they are just protecting the interests of those people that are appointed, and you just see them. That's why they are running after it. If you say it, they just leave the rule of law. Even despite the fact that the law say that so this person will be released, this person, if they will say that this court that are saying this, if the court gives order, they are not complaining, they are not holding the court. They say that unless the federal government have agreed against. That means there's no need for law. The federal government will be making decisions for us, who goes out and who come in, who to be held. That's it.
All right, thank you very much, Salvation.
Thank you for calling. All right, we've got Chris in Ikorodu. Hello, Chris. Thanks for calling.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Sandra, good afternoon.
Sandra and Aghogho.
Well done, Chris. Please go ahead.
Yes, Chris from Ikorodu once more.
Oh, all right. Go ahead, please.
Yes, on the particular Supreme Court judgment that the former AGF cited, I just went online, before I called, I went online, Googled it up. I saw the judgment in full. I read it for more than 3 times. It's a very long read, but I took my time, read everything word for word. Aghogho was denied bail at the High Court. He went to the Appellate Court. He was again denied bail. He now went up to the Supreme Court. And Supreme Court still maintained status quo, asking that he be detained based on national interest. Now, that is different from that of El Zakzaky and others. In that of El Zakzaky and others, court granted them bail. There's a difference now. That's what people are not understanding. Court did not grant Asari bail. That was why his case went up to the Supreme Court, and Supreme Court also maintained status quo. Why that of El Zakzaky and Sambo Dasuki, court granted bail. There's the two different things, so people should understand this. Why making this case of whether the AGF has power or not to agree on this. So that particular Supreme Court judgment that he cited shouldn't have even been cited at all.
Yes.
He shouldn't have been cited. People should go back and read that of Aghogho. He was not granted bail. Why El Zakzaky was granted bail by several courts, Sambo Dasuki, the same thing. And these people keep on disobeying these court orders, and at the end of the day, someone comes up in a Senate screening and I don't know whether...
And it's confirmed.
Does us the more you look, the less you see, and we are here arguing. They should go back and study the case. Asari was not granted bail. He was denied bail. High Court, Appeal Court, he was denied bail. He went to the Supreme Court. It was sustained. While Sambo Dasuki has been granted bail by several courts, even ECOWAS courts, granted him bail. These guys refused to release him. So it is not in the place of the AGF to decide who to release or who not to release. It is in their place to obey court order.
Period. Thank you for calling.
Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chris.
Okay, who can we take? I think Emmanuel from Chevron is on standby. Release Emmanuel. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Emmanuel, please go ahead.
In fact, the way Nigeria is going, I don't know. We are just praying to God for this country not to break up. we are setting a point that our children coming behind. What kind of foundation are we laying down for them? Look at what is going on in the country. What is the essence of a court? So if the judiciary, if the executive are saying that they have the right to say, okay, they have the right to let go and have the right to help someone. What is it? But the problem is that you can see the reason why Buhari, the president, said the judiciary is corrupt. You can see he knows everything in and out what is going on in this country. Because I don't see the reason why the court gave order to release. What is the essence? Why are they setting that? What is the essence of the court? If they are, but my problem is because of our children hearing all these kind of things on television and hearing, reading all this kind of.
Eventually, they will read about it. I thought
they will read about it, and they will build up exactly what the kind of foundation they met on ground. And
the maxim: what you sow, you reap.
Yeah, but can we not sow? I mean, that's the point of that's the point of Nigeria Info, though. The point of Nigeria Info is so that we can talk and educate.
See, we can talk and educate, but these people in power, they are not ready. It's just like these people.
So let's stop giving them power.
Okay, how do we do it? When there are some people, they are there collecting 5,000 to vote for who they're not supposed to vote for.
This is how we do it. First, we talk about it on Nigeria Info. Then we take civic action.
I've been listening to this. Let me tell you something. Do you know that if you remember what happened in Abia State the last time, when a court gave an order to swear in this exactly, I think, Uche organ. Another court sat aside the same. Do you know that this is the same court? Another one stood up and said, "No. Look at what are they reading?" So what are we talking about? So that is, it's like you don't get my point. My point now is that why these people? What are they studying? Why are they there? Look at even the CGN. Look at what they asked them about EcoCat. You can hear what he's talking about. That someone drive an aeroplane and this and what our children are reading all these things. They are listening to news. They are more. They are more. I don't know. I feel so bad.
Much, Emmanuel.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think we can take Wasiu. Wasiu says we are suffering from a long time rot in the system. Wasiu.
Yep. Good evening.
Good evening.
Yep. Like I was saying, you see, this issue has to do with the fact that we are neither here nor there in terms of what is really right for us. Sometimes people get funny. When they phone into radio, they start saying all kinds of things based on their own perspective. But they are always reluctant to take the other side of the view. How do I mean? Who are the actors of state? You are talking about the leader of the state. You are talking about those in the judiciary led by the Attorney General of the Federation. You are talking about the CJN. These are the people who are the regulators of the system of the state. So, Malawi might not have been wrong to say the right to deny people release or to allow them to go lies with him, because he is one of the key actors of the state. And if anything happens, we will hold actors of state responsible. So I think what we should be stressing and what we should be looking at is the actions and inactions of the category of people that fall into this trap. What are they really after? Are their actions in the interest of the state? Are they the only one in the state?
All right, Wasiu. Thank you very much for your comments. And the rest of you who've been lined up On the other side of the hour, you can join the conversation.
Yes, indeed. This is a conversation that will continue on Public Square. Rotimi Sankari Aghogho right here driving that conversation, as well as Ayobe. I am Sandra Ezekwesili. If you are impatient to talk about it on Public Square, tweet at us, Nigeria Info FM, Facebook as well, Nigeria Info FM. You can also talk to me. I talk a lot on Twitter. SEZEKWESILI. That's my Twitter handle. SEZEKWESILI. You can also follow me on Instagram, and Facebook is Sandra Ezekwesili. We have the business news coming up next.
been handed to the President of the Senate for the screening to commence. Join 99.3 Nigeria Info from Wednesday, 24th of July at 10 a.m. for live coverage, expert analysis, and interviews. Nigeria Info. Keep listening.
All right, welcome to Public Square and the continuation of the screening for the ministerial nominees for a third straight day. Friday, the National Assembly shouldn't be seating, but they are seating. And I've just 15 minutes past 4 have resumed the screening. We'll get to that shortly. Oghogho Ehanire, who was the former Minister of State for Health, is before the Assembly already. And let me introduce our esteemed host and guest today. In fact, both of them are actually hosts of this show, Public Square. Aghogho is here. Aghogho hosts the Idea segment. And Rotimi Sankore, the host for Public Square also too. So welcome both of them to our coverage of the National Assembly screening of the ministerial nominees.
Hello, Aghogho. I should say that there is no Ideas segment today. And that's partly because, if you remember, Rotimi, you and I looked into this question of screening of ministerial nominees without any portfolio attached. More than a month ago, in fact, on the 7th of June, when we had an Ideas, an Ideas episode about that. So now I think we're just dealing with the pure politics of it. And I would even quarrel, Aghogho, with the expression ministerial screening. It's true, what the Constitution actually requires is Senate confirmation. And that's all that's happening. The Senate is confirming, or not confirming, we haven't seen anybody not. But the point is that screening implies some kind of rigorous exercise in which you go into the qualifications, the suitability, and there I even say some of the Ideas issues, the integrity and the ethics, accountability and so on. But when all you're doing is more than half of those who have appeared so far, under one guise or the other, have been asked to take a bow and go, I think that we are kind of abusing language when we use terms like screening.
Yes, actually, our country is, I remember this book we read in primary or secondary school. I think it's called 1 Week, 1 Trouble.
Ah, Wilson Tagbo.
Really?
Honestly,
I can't believe I remember the name of the book and the month and the boy's name who was always getting into trouble.
Oh gosh, Anyway, so
what's the trouble in this particular
in Nigeria? Nigeria is more than 1 week, 1 trouble. This scandal going on in the Senate, which they claim is you've just made the point, Ayo. There is no screening going on. In fact, I was watching the faces of the senators that I know, especially those that I have a good idea how they think as the thing was going on. And some were shaking their heads, some were looking at the floor, some were looking up. But the only person that stood up out of all these people was Okpeyemi Bamidele. And he stood up and said, he thinks that there is an important point to be made here. And in a backhanded way, he made the point. He said, there is no screening going on here.
Really?
Yeah, that's what the Constitution says is Senate confirmation. So,
really? So great minds are thinking alike.
Yes.
If he said what I said.
Yes. Okpe,
I didn't know he had said that.
Yes. So, Okpe is conversant with these things, and he's aware. He's alert to misrepresentation. So he said, people, we need to use the right terminology here. We shouldn't keep saying we are screening people. What we've been asked to do is to confirm, and they have been appearing here, and we're either asking them or not asking them questions.
And we're taking our duties in that regard in a rather perfunctory way.
Yeah, it's completely ridiculous, as the tweets promoting today's program says. I mean, there are two questions that we ask there. One is that in the real world, will people go for a job interview without knowing what they are applying for? And the second is, in the real world, will an interview panel interview candidates without knowing what they are interviewing them for? So, I mean, these are two big questions. And I will add a third one, which is that this idea that people who have had legislative experience should bow and go is extremely hilarious. Yes, it's hilarious because you are confirming somebody for an executive position. You don't even know which executive position you are confirming the person for. But the person has had legislative experience, and those are the people you choose not to ask even a single question. It's like saying that the Okada rider, you are interviewing the person to drive a bigger vehicle. You don't know whether it is Molue, train, aeroplane, but the person has ridden Okada before, so the person should then get into the plane.
Well, at least that's driving. Supposing the person had just been the conductor before. And what you're now talking about is...
it is just a special country. And look at the deficit we have in education. I think, was it Adamu that even volunteered and said that the out-of-school children now closer to 16 million. And nobody said, Oga, wait, 16 million. Hey, under your watch. So,
you see,
how many schools does that then translate into?
It's incredible.
That we need. How many classrooms, how many teachers? They don't call them back. Even when they score an own goal.
But then, Rotimi, doesn't it make you also wonder? Because when the president had been re-elected and he was now asking his ministers to come and bring their report, their score sheet to him. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What was on their report sheet? What was his pass mark? Because between the ministers who are coming back and those who are not, one is left to wonder, is it that some of them, just as you saw in the British cabinet, that some of them chose not to come back because they've had enough, or they feel that they're just, pouring water into a basket? Because I really don't see, in terms of attainment, between some who have left and some who are coming back, I don't see what the improvement is. And I think that there's a bigger problem with the ministerial list. Of course, as a Nigerian woman and as a woman from the South, I think that the president's list is quite frankly an insult. It's just as if he does not see. And it's one thing for the president, for us to have already noted that when the president says he's only going to pick people that he knows, he doesn't know people outside his circle. But then one would expect that his people that he does know, there are people close to him who have wider circle of knowledge and therefore are better able to identify people. Those people may have made recommendations to him, and yet the president has more or less gone for more of the same. And I think that when he was re-elected, it was a question, is he going to relax and say, I must be doing something right because I was re-elected, rather than I was re-elected because people hated me slightly less than they hated the other options? Or was he going to say, I was re-elected, but now is the time for me to lay down my legacy. I have to make an impact on this country in the next 4 years, so that when I go, people will know that I had set the course of the country. And I think that, of course, part of the problem is that because of the poor quality of the confirmation hearings, we don't know enough about the people, the new people who are coming in. But so we don't know whether these people are actually going to make that impact that we assume, or we may be wrong in assuming that that's what the president wants to do. As I said, it may be that he's resting on his oars, or not. But this list doesn't convey that. There's too much padding. This is the largest ministerial list. When Governor Fashola was put in charge of 3 ministries, even though the president had 42 ministers, the excuse then was that Fashola needs to do this because we're trying to save costs. Now we have 43 ministers.
And also in terms of recycling, so in terms of the ex-senators, ex-ministers, ex-governors, ex-deputy governors, if you look at all that list, it comes to 32.
Those who have been there before.
Yes, 32 X this, X that. So we have multiple issues to deal with there. I mean, one is that these 14 ex-governors are on pension for life.
Well, I think that the National Assembly needs to, that even their state assemblies. But again, they need to deal with that. But I just wanted to flag something before I forget. You remember when we were discussing this matter on the idea segment, and you and I were, you were at pains to say that this is what I was told about the reasons for the delay in the nomination of the presidential candidate. And that was that the president, instead of being proactive, is asking the states to nominate. And I have a suspicion that is why you have so many ex-governors coming up.
Because in other words, they just nominated themselves.
They're in charge of the party machinery in many cases, so they've nominated themselves.
They nominated themselves. 6 people who have only been senators, 14 ex-ministers, 10 ex-governors, some of whom have been senators, 2 ex-deputy governors. One of them has been in the House of Assembly, I mean the House of Reps. And then just to mention in terms of profession, and honestly I don't know what this has to do with it, but there are 5 engineers.
Lawyers must be ruling in that.
3 medical doctors, 1 accountant, 1 economist, 9 lawyers.
Only 9?
Yes, including 3 senior advocates. Other demographics, 7 women, which is just shameful. 5 of these people are over 70, so much for youth. I mean, Ayo, you have a breakdown of the age thing.
Well, no, I couldn't get the ages of all of them, but I think that, yes, there are some over 70. The majority fall into the 50 to 60s age bracket. There are a couple who are in their 40s. And the youngest one that I could find so far is Sadia Umar Farouk, and she is a former federal commissioner in the National Commission for Refugees, Migrants and Internally Displaced Persons.
We need to take a break for ads.
So
we'll come back to the demographics immediately after.
I said only 44.
Okay. This is still the continuation of the coverage of the National Assembly's confirmation or not confirmation of ministerial nominees for this.
By the way, Okwe said, and they have not actually been confirmed.
Yeah,
even though it is confirmation hearing.
Yes. Because, and for the last nearly 15 minutes, Osage Ehanire, who is former Minister of Health and is also from Edo State nominee, has spent the last 12 minutes talking about his achievements. Now he's facing questions from the Senate. So we'll get back to that. Today, 2 nominees have already gone through. That first, Hadi Serika, who is the minister, who was former Minister of State for Aviation, and Abubakar Malami, former Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice. So going by what the President of the Senate said, they still have 5 more to go today. Let's see how it goes. We'll be back right after this. Please stay with us.
Coming up, we'll be back in a moment. Welcome back to your number one talk, news, and sports station. This is Nigeria Info. 2 months after President Muhammadu Buhari's inauguration, 43 names have been handed to the President of the Senate for the screening to commence. Join 99.3 Nigeria Info from Wednesday, 24th of July at 10 a.m. for live coverage, expert analysis, and interviews. Nigeria Info. Keep listening.
Welcome back. It is 25 minutes to 5 on 99.3 Nigeria Info, and it's coverage of the screening of the ministerial nominees. Aghogho, Rotimi Sankore here, and we're having a great discussion. Osage Ehanire is the ministerial nominee from Edo State. He was former Minister of State for Health, and he is the 25th ministerial nominee being well, looks like being questioned now, unlike several others who've taken a bow and moved on. And we're going to go over to Abuja to hear some of the questions, and we come back and have some discussion. Please stay with us.
Nominee, I looked through your CV, and it is very impressive. In addition to the fact that you have served as Honorable Minister of State Health, I have also listened to your presentation, and you touched on the focus of the President on primary healthcare delivery. Mr. Nominee, you are aware, as much as most of us do, that the menace of fake drugs in this country is alarming. I'm happy that in your presentation of stewardship, you talked about the destruction of 1 billion tramadol by NAFDAC. Mr. Nominee, from Karuan and Moda in Sokoto, the very last parts, not in Sokoto, the northern end, to Brass, in Bayelsa State, into the Atlantic Ocean. You have chemists, you have pharmacy scattered all over the corners, everywhere you go in this country. And the truth remains, if you have to borrow the words of Mr. President, that if we don't kill corruption, corruption will kill us. That is applicable to fake drugs. If we don't kill fake drugs will kill the less privileged in the society. And of course, there are more in population. Based on your status as the immediate past Honorable Minister of State for Health, I will not be surprised if Mr. President, if by the grace of God you are confirmed and Mr. President appoints you back into that sector, what strategic policy reforms would you introduce to strengthen NAFDAC to fight the menace of fake drugs? Thank you, Mr. President.
You can respond to the questions, please.
Respond? Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Senate President. I would like to start with the last question of the distinguished senator from Bayelsa State. The question of fake drugs is truly, as you say, a horrible menace in the country, and it even made an appearance on the foreign news network some time ago. The check of fake drugs is a combined effort. NAFDAC is involved, But most of all of it will come from outside by forced importation, declared as something else. So joint effort between NAFDAC, customs, and all others who work at the border, border police, and even immigration will have to be very responsible for overseeing this importation. But wherever the importation is found, they're all tested and then destroyed. The routine police and civil defense definitely also will be aware of production of fake drugs, or even if they're locally manufactured, or trafficking in these drugs, and definitely have the powers to arrest and present such culprits to the police or to NAFDAC for proper steps. Senator Olamilekun, the NHIS is, as I said in my presentation, still a work in progress. A new executive secretary was just named, and also I understand this chamber here has sent a bill for assent. It's probably being studied now, which will introduce radically new dimensions to National Health Insurance Scheme, particularly the compulsory participation of employees in the health insurance scheme. Is an extremely important financing mechanism for the health sector, and I'm sure it will receive very, very close attention as it begins to unfold. The tertiary health care, as I also said, do require reforms. The first step in carrying out a repair is to admit that something is not right. And all of us know by common knowledge that the confidence in the tertiary institutions is not always very high everywhere, although they try their best. But there is a study going on that will give us insights into what is wrong and what the best way to correct the problems, which are mostly administrative problems. The government, the state also suffers losses, financial losses up to $1 billion by estimates, which of capital flight, which are not helpful to us at all. Senator Sadiq, the primary healthcare center is truly the bedrock and the foundation of healthcare everywhere. It is emphasized in the Astana and also in the Alma Ata declarations and in the strategic development goals STG 3. It is true that building primary healthcare centers is a favorite let's say constituency project of honorable members and senators. In fact, I also use this opportunity to appeal that building such structures for primary health care should be in consultation with the Ministry of Health to tell you exactly where they are needed, and you also need a special design. It cannot be just any house, and then the location also has to be properly selected in order for it to be of best service. The policy of the government is to have at least one primary healthcare center in every political ward. That will be about 9,844, or roughly 10,000. If you have a large ward, you can have two, but they all have a particular design, and this design should best be maintained. Anyone who wants to build, whether from the private sector or as a philanthropist, should obtain a design from the government, from Ministry of Health, and also advice on the best location. Some primary healthcare centers are located in the bush or in where nobody resides, and nobody will be able to get there at night. The other thing that you can do is that you don't, if you have a constituency project, it doesn't have to be the building of a primary healthcare center. Out of the 30,000 that you mentioned, about 10,000 have been selected for the program of building one in every political ward. So we don't really need more building, we need renovation. And for those who still have an interest in participating, the primary healthcare centers need more than just a place for delivery.
Mr. Nomini, I have a long list of senators who want to ask you questions.
Yes.
So I would advise that you try to be very concise and precise.
Yes, but with your
so
permission,
that you can talk more.
this seems to be very important, but I do think that those who want to help in primary healthcare sector can help with provision of water, provision of solar power, with provision of staff quarters. So if you want to participate, you can look for a primary healthcare center and add staff quarters, solar power, and help with finance training of staff. That will help. It is true that there's been some stagnation in the demographic health survey indices, and the improvement in the primary healthcare sector, particularly also the improvement in transportation, patient transportation, will improve the indices. I do believe that answers the questions to a reasonable extent.
Senator Matthew Rogide, Senator I.D. Giang, and Senator Sandy Ono, in that order.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Matthew Rogide. I represent Edo South Central District, Edo State. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, thank you very, very much for this privilege to talk about the nominee that is before us. As a matter of fact, Dr. Emmanuel Osagi Ehanire is from my constituency, Edo South Central District. And of course, it was the immediate past.
All right, still the ministerial nominees going before the National Assembly, and I will be Rotimi Sankoristi here in the last, it's over 45 minutes, well, less than 45 minutes or thereabout. Osage Ehanire, who's the former Minister of Health, has been taking questions, and the questions still going on, Rotimi. But by the way, you can watch this entire thing. I see a number of you hooked up on YouTube already. We're streaming this live on YouTube as well as on Twitter. So if you've got comments there, let us
Is it Twitter
have
or
them.
Facebook?
Sorry, on Facebook rather. So live on Facebook, live on YouTube. Okay.
I mean, wasn't it just interesting
like
that somebody was asked, what new initiative do you have? And the answer seemed to be, this is what's happening now.
Yeah, I mean, we're also commenting that the man doesn't know what joined up government is.
No, he does. I was actually saying that you were saying that that's not his brief. And
I said he's offside. It's offside.
Good that he should know something outside what he was involved in.
So, because he was Minister of State for Health, they're asking him health questions.
Yes.
So, we should point out that his former boss, Professor Isaac Adeole, his name is not on the list. So in terms of wild speculation on who could be Minister of Health, it won't be completely out of place to put him in the running, even though there are 3 medical doctors on that list. And what I was pointing out was that he started taking responsibility for primary health centers, which actually the state governors and the local governments should be featuring more there. And he wasn't talking more about what he should be doing, assuming that he is going to be the Minister of Health and not the Minister in charge of Keke Napep.
So instead of talking about how he was going to liaise with them and get their buy into any federal government program with a view to achieving
he started talking SDG. About their work.
So those are, I think, key areas in terms of policy and healthcare for what they can do. He talked about tramadol destruction as a way in dealing with.
But were the tramadol destroyed because they were fake drugs or because they were harmful?
Because they are harmful to
Nigerians.
Yeah.
So I think that in a way, it's a little bit a dialogue of the deaf, although I would say that in this regard, they're certainly asking him more questions than the bow and go culture. And maybe the legislators have seen that that bow and go is not really going down well with people.
Seriously embarrassed. So somebody suggested that it should be extended to one of the nominees because the person is somehow related to the Senate president. And I mean, it is, yes.
Yeah, that was one. And there was another one.
Yeah, I mean, it's bad enough that they are extending it to...
This one is he's a brother of a senator who was a very good man while in the Senate.
Yeah, and they know his brother very
well.
I mean, maybe they're just looking for creative ways to explain the fact that they're not really doing much work in regards to the screening.
Yeah,
or the.
I would have been interested. The fellow before this one,
Matthew Regidi.
No, Hadi Sirika.
Hadi Sirika, Minister for State.
Oh, yes.
Former Minister of State.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nobody asked him that that logo he went to launch in the UK at the Air Festival. Spent millions, in fact, tens of millions of naira launching a logo that never took off. And nobody's...
let's say it's yet to take off because the government stance is still to insist that the logo that fly. Nigeria Air or whatever
Air Nigeria.
Air Nigeria is still going to fly. And, even to ask him whether that should have been a priority in an industry in which several local airlines have either folded up, gone out of business, or are under the care of the Asset Management Corporation of Nigeria because they haven't repaid their debts. And that's before you get into the privations and the suffering that passengers are exposed to with regard to everything connected with airports in Nigeria and air travel. And the only thing that drives them there, of course, is the privations of road travel.
I think the one we've really been looking forward to, just because of the unexpected nature of whatever he may get up to there, is Festus Keyamo.
Yes, it's an interesting
he announced this morning that we should look out for him. That he
at 11 o'clock.
At 11 a.m. No, he said from 11 a.m.
Well.
So we thought he had some expo that he may be called first. And it's 8 minutes to 5 now. His village people would have waited.
And I have to say that I was saying that I feel sorry for some of these legislators because honestly, I'm sure our listeners were fully alive and awake, but I have to confess that the senators, to my mind, they speak so slowly that one wants to just drop off.
But some of them have been dozing. Some of them have been dozing there.
I quite frankly, there are times when you cannot resist. If I were
some have been, and even though they've given all of them dossiers on all the nominees. Some people turn up and you see some scratching the other guys. Like, who is this person?
Don't they have pictures attached?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
Maybe they don't have pictures attached.
You don't even know the person you are supposed to be confirming. The dossier is in front of you. You are scratching your neighbor now. But it could be this guy.
I also think maybe a rule that the President of the Senate did put in place shortly after saying that only the senators from the state of the nominee should not speak until all the senators have asked questions.
That was introduced today.
Because
on what basis?
Because the senators from the states ended up praising to the high heavens.
We know you so well.
Maybe that's why.
We know you so well.
Okay.
Yes.
You've been with us for many years. Nobody here can fault your commitment to the country.
I have to say that really, as I said, this is not an ideas aspect, but just in terms of the idea of accountability, there's an uneasy feeling of hand washing hand, hand shaking hand, and it's all smoke and mirrors. And we, the Nigerian people, are we're given this sort of bread and circuses for entertainment, if this is really the word for these rather dull things going on. But we are given this, and then the idea is that all everything that should be done has been done, and that our interests are being safeguarded. And I have to say that even though one would expect that because the APC is not only in control of the House, but also has in control of it has its own people in control of the National Assembly, that one might expect that is going to be even more of a self-congratulatory bow and go type of thing. But quite frankly, apart from that time when former President Obasanjo kept on trying to get Minister Borishade through, I would say that it's not that much different from what had gone before with regard to previous ministerial nominees. The National Assembly has developed some very bad habits, and instead of eradicating those habits, is talking about our convention, and our convention basically is to be lazy and not do a job on behalf of the people who elected us.
All right, so let's take a quick break. We come back. There's the news. National Assembly still going on with Osagie Ehanire. Maybe there for over an hour at this rate, but we'll keep you up to date with that one. Please don't go anywhere. We'll be back right after.
And after the ad and news in summary, we'll start taking calls to know what you think about this no portfolio, bow and go, and all
everybody is going to complain about it.
Well, we should hear from people.
All right.
More news and information coming up. We'll be back in a moment.
Osage Hanire, former Minister of State for Health and the nominee from Edo State, has taken a bow, and we're waiting for, I think, 5 more to go, going by what the President of the Senate and the Chairman of the Screening Committee, the President of the Senate, Ahmed Lawan, did say yesterday. So, Ayo Berotmi Sankore, we're still here.
Yeah, I was just looking at the screen and seeing Festus Keyamo, who had advertised his appearance anytime after.
Finally, I think we'll be
smiling from ear to
coming
ear.
in smiling.
The
But
big
you see, I
announcement,
think that to be frank, Festus is one of the people that you could say that, yeah, this is somebody who is going to inject some life into a slightly staid cabinet. But then at the same time, and of course, because he controls the president's, media relations, or the spokes, forgotten what his particular
During the campaign
role was. And so you kind of think he was the director of strategic communications for his the president's re-election bid. So you would think, oh yes, that maybe this is somebody who, if he's not, since the president is bringing back the former attorney general, maybe he would be somebody that is going to information. But then you see that the president is also bringing back the former minister of information, and. Without wanting to rain on your parade here, because I know that you come under this ministry in a way, I think that one would have to be very charitable to say that the communications and the information management by the federal government in the last 4 years has been proactive, inspiring, energizing, or quite frankly informative.
Before Festus starts and we switch to him to hear what he has to say, if you've just joined us, it's just worth recapping that out of all the nominees, in terms of breakdown, there are 6 ex-senators that have just been senators, 14 ex-ministers, 10 ex-governors, and some of those 10 ex-governors have been senators, 2 ex-deputy governors. In terms of profession, lawyers, stop it, 9 lawyers, including 3 senior advocates, 5 engineers, 3 medical doctors, 1 accountant, 1 economist, 1 former inspector general of police, 1 retired major general. In terms of age, 5 over 70s, 5 under 50s, the rest are in their 60s. And only 7 women.
Yeah, and on that point, Rotimi, I wanted, before you start listening to the hearing, we tune back into the hearings, to point out that one interesting thing about the women nominees is that in, I think, about 3 of the cases, and that's almost half when we consider that there are only 7, in 3 of the cases, there's another nominee, ministerial nominee from the same state. So that, for example, while you have Sharon Ekeazor, who is being nominated as a minister from Anambra State, you still have Chris Ngige nominated. From Bauchi, you have Miriam Katagum, who is our permanent delegate to UNESCO. But we also have returning minister Adamu. And I think there's another state where the same phenomenon is observed. So that the impression, yes, Kwara State, where you have Wemi Saraki nominated and you have Lai Mohammed, another returning minister. So the impression that one gets is that the president is really just adding women on, and in a way that's why the cabinet is so bloated, because the requirement is that you have 36 and 1 from the Federal Capital Territory. Incidentally, we don't yet have a ministerial nominee from the Federal Capital.
They claim that the extra people are 1 from each geopolitical zone.
Yes, but that's not required.
It's not. Yes, I'm saying that they claim.
And it does. Again, it suggests that if you that there's no overall plan about what should happen in the next 4 years. And once you don't have a plan, then you can begin bringing pieces, of the jigsaw and sticking them anywhere you like, because they're never going to make a coherent picture. And I think that's really the message that I get from this. Apart from the fact, I mean, the headline was the complaint by persons with disabilities that they haven't been considered. There have been some remarks about the lack of youthfulness and so on. But since there's somebody who is under 40, under 50, sorry, I think we should, listen to what he has to say.
All right, so let's cross over to Festus Keyamo, Senior Advocate of Nigeria from Delta State, and hear what he has to say before the Senate.
I've been one that has been totally dedicated to the crusade for social justice using the instrumentality of the law. I have used the instrumentality of the law at all stages of my life to fight for social justice, to fight for human rights, to fight for accountable governments, and to promote and entrench democracy. And about 10 years ago, I took this further by even accepting to serve as a lead prosecutor to the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. And in that role, I have prosecuted so many high-profile individuals in court. And so I've been an active prosecutor and a general practitioner of law all these years. In that role as a prosecutor, I have won some of my cases, like all lawyers. I have lost some of my cases, like all lawyers, and many of them are still in court and on appeal. It is also that passion to entrench democracy that made me some years ago, I went to court to enforce the powers of this National Assembly on my own volition, on my own expense. I fought for this National Assembly in respect of the appointment of service chiefs on my own. I continuously drew the attention of this Senate and the House of Representatives to their powers regarding the appointment of service chiefs, and the President needed the concurrence of this House. And when they didn't listen to me, I went to court. And in a landmark judgment, I won the case where the court said service chiefs must come and bow before this House before they can be appointed. And after that judgment, all the service chiefs were sacked, new service chiefs were appointed, and since that judgment, all service chiefs have been coming to the National Assembly to get their approval. That is the kind of passion I've had to fight, even for the National Assembly. The passion for human rights have also led me to defend across the country, irrespective of tribe and religion, students who have been detained illegally, civil rights activists, journalists, social crusaders across the country, free of charge. All of these free of charge. And I know many of them listening to me across the country can testify to this. And even though I don't believe in a separatist agenda in this country, I don't believe, but that passion for human rights have also led me to even defend separatist leaders. Apart from their vision, their crusade for separatism, I defended them in respect of their human rights alone. Separate leaders for even, in respect of organizations like MASO, like the Biafran Independent Movement, like the Niger Delta People's Volunteer Force, like the MOSO, many of the separate, and I got most of them out of detention, free of charge. That has been my passion for human rights, using the instrumentality of the law. And because of all of this, like you see my CV, it earned me the Global Award of Human Rights in 2007 by the United States Global Institute, Global Leadership Council in Washington in 2017. I was conferred with the Global Human Rights Award. I've had the rare privilege to have been brought up and mentored by two of perhaps the strongest characters in this country. And I'm perhaps the only person to have had that privilege. Two of the strongest characters in terms of anti-corruption and human rights. And that is Chief Ganifawa Emi, who brought me up, like you see my CV. And of course, President Muhammadu Buhari right now. I am the only person who enjoys that privilege. Two of the strongest characters in this country have mentored me. And so, in the pursuit of all of this, I have asked so many questions of government in the past. I have asked governments as to how our monies have been used or misused, how public monies have been spent or misspent, and how public monies have been appropriated or misappropriated. But I discovered that there's only so much you can do as a private individual. I discovered that. I didn't get answers. And then, it was then I took a conscious decision some years ago to be part of a political process that could get us into power. I took a conscious decision. Because that conscious decision I took was because I discovered that what you can scream, what you can be screaming on the outside for 10 years to achieve, because you are brimming with ideas, you are brimming with all kinds of solutions to our problems on the outside. And you can be screaming for 10 years. You can achieve that in 10 minutes when you are part of government and part of a political process. Because you see, it is a natural inclination of governments all over the world to see critics on the outside as enemies. So they take your views with a pinch of salt. They see opposition as, it's natural all over the world, as enemies. So I took that conscious decision to be part of a political process. And that was during the formation of the All Progressive Congress, the APC. And I joined the APC in Delta State. I was a foundation member of the APC in Delta State. The first major meeting held in Delta State involving the national leaders that came to Delta State, because we didn't have a government. Delta is a PDP state, and we didn't have a government. That meeting was held in my house, in my parlor. And so I can say that the APC was formed in my house in Delta State. It's not a surprise I'm standing here today as a nominee of the APC from that state. It was formed in my house, the APC. And so I discovered that you can change your methodology in the fight for the rights of the people by being part of the process. You can change your methodology without changing your basic principles and your essence as a person. You can do that. And so that is why I decided to serve, to accept to serve. Despite all I have said and all my antecedents, I've decided to serve. I've decided to be part of the process. And with your kind permission, your kind consideration, if you do approve me, I want to be part of the process, and I think I have a lot to prove, and I want to make a change. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you.
Distinguished Senator Michael Opeyemi Bamidele.
Thank you, Mr. President, sitting in the chair. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I am Michael Opeyemi Bamidele, representing Ekiti Central Senatorial District. Our dear nominee, I begin by congratulating you as a Nigerian citizen, because you have a reputation that precedes you. And for those of us who are familiar with your antecedents, and for somebody like me who can describe himself, as a matter of fact, as a product of the same struggle with you, struggle of Nigerian students over the years, struggle of Nigerian youth, struggle of the civil society, and partly the creation of the Nigerian media. I am happy to be a part of this process. I have two questions for you. God, through the Senate and ultimately through Mr. President, granting you the opportunity to serve in the Federal Cabinet of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The first thing that will stare you on the face is that being a public administrator is far so different from being an activist. In other words, Mr. Nominee, how would you be able to handle that delicate balancing that the poor will continue to find their voice in you. The civil society, the less privileged, will continue to find their voice in you. And even the rich and wealthy will have to find their voice in you as a public servant. And suddenly it dawns on you that internally generated revenue trickles in a little at a time. And many of those things that we would have wished as a civil activists to be done as soon as yesterday cannot be done. So how will you balance the two? That you don't lose the administration of your admirers, and at the same time you're able to discharge the responsibilities bestowed on you as a public servant based on the realities of governance. And secondly, I would like you, again, in a nutshell, to tell this Senate, and of course Nigerians who I'm sure are also listening to you, your philosophy of life and how you believe this will be brought to bear to be a strong addition to the performing team of President Buhari. It's important that I hear you out on this. Mr. President, I thank you again for the opportunity. The DSP.
Thank you, Mr. President. Uvi Omo Aghogho, I represent Delta Central Senatorial District. Mr. President, first, like I did earlier on today, I'd like to extend my heartfelt appreciation to Mr. President for this great nomination. I also want to extend my congratulations to my brother, the nominee, my constituent. Mr. President, Senator James Manager will speak for my caucus. But before he does that, as a senator representing him, I thought I should put in a few words. I rise today, Mr. President, as the first defense witness to corroborate everything he has told the Senate today. Mr. President, this is one nomination that will add value to the Federal Executive Council headed by Mr. President. Mr. President, I know Festus Kayamo. He's a very decent man. He is a great ambassador of my people, the Yoruba nation that I have the privilege to represent here. He is also a great ambassador for my state. Mr. President, in his practice of law, he has left his imprints, footprints in the sands of time. There is no area of the law where you will not see Kayamo's landmark contributions. Yes. But having said that, Mr. President, I just have a couple of questions for him. Or do I call them concerns? For want of a better expression. Mr. Kayamo, as a lawyer of so many years and a senior advocate of Nigeria, you've traversed most of our courts, with the high courts of the state, the Federal High Court, the Court of Appeal, and indeed Supreme Court. You know, for want of a better expression, you know where the bodies are buried. I want to ask you, what major reforms would you want to see in the the justice sector, having practiced for so many years. Then number two, we've had so many issues, so many concerns expressed by well-meaning Nigerians about the saturation of the ballot paper with so many political parties, mushroom political parties that ordinarily should not even exist. But because of the provisions of Section 222 of the Constitution, to the extent that INEC adjudges you to have made the requirements for registration of a political party, you are registered and placed on the ballot.
All right, just cutting away from the live coverage of the ministerial screening from the Senate, Festus Keyamo, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, is still being asked questions by the Deputy President of the Senate, Aghogho. We'll come back to that. We've got some ads, and then we come back and we will talk some more.
This man has told people that he's not Aghogho. He's you should know now.
I said Aghogho. He's from Delta State, so he's giving support to Festus Keyamo.
His village people.
All right, so let's take a quick break. We'll be right.
Okay, and we do promise we have to go back to Festus. We have to go back to the National Assembly because Festus, is one of the more unique characters that has been nominated.
Yeah.
And it would have been, it's interesting to hear from him.
Yeah.
So we'll take the ads, take a quick hype, and we promise we'll come back straight to the phones.
Right.
More news and information coming up. We'll be back in a moment.
conditions. One, that of public interest. Two, the interest of justice. And three, the need to prevent abuse of legal process. Litany of nulli prosecution have been granted, but I want to ask you, using your celestial mind as an activist, to respond to this question. And secondly, I just want to say that as a versatile minister, I know you to be intellectually mobile. You recite the second stanza of the national anthem. Thank you.
That is not a question. That is not a question. So you have asked about two questions.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
The single Dino, that is not a question.
Mr. Chairman, screening as described is to screen a candidate. And excuse me.
No, it's okay. That is not a question. You have asked very, very direct questions, so you can disregard the latter part. You can respond to the questions, please.
Thank you. Thank you, the President of the Senate. Let me start with, because of the constraints of time perhaps that we'll be running into, let me start with the question asked by distinguished Senator Aghogho. The first question was the major reforms that I would like to see in the justice sector. We all agree that our justice sector has been beset by so many problems. And I think
there you have Festus Keyamo still going on. We'll cut back to him at some point. But Rotimi and I, it looks like a number of questions, both around the legal aspect of probably what they think maybe Attorney General, Minister of Justice, even though they did.
But then if Festus were to go to the Ministry of Justice, what is the point of bringing Malami back?
Sports.
Unless... I have already
nobody has any idea where they are going.
Unless it's to bring him in as a junior minister in that ministry. But really that is a dissipation of...
going by the non-logic of this whole thing, why can't Malami go to sports?
Excuse me, why is it always sports? I've said before that sports is really the unlucky ministry.
Like the Ministry of Special
Duties. People just feel that
Malami could go to economy and
there
finance
and compensate somebody with it.
There is no logic to the thing, but we've promised that we are going to the...
so if you don't have our numbers are 01277 0993, 01277 1993, 01277 2993, and then 01277 3993. I see a lot of comments on Facebook. We'll take those ones, so just keep sending on Facebook as well as on Twitter. But let's hear you now.
Technology. Hello. Hello. Welcome to the public square.
Thank you. Good evening, sir.
Thank you. Who's calling and from where?
My name is Emmanuel. I'm calling from Ibafo.
Okay.
In Ogun State.
Okay. So our two questions for today is: do you think people should go for job interviews without knowing what they're applying for? And can panels interview candidates without knowing what job they're interviewing them for?
You can only have that situation in a country like Nigeria, sir. Because I'm one of those people that strongly believe that these people should have been given portfolio before they face the Senate. So how do you ask them general question when you don't know where eventually they will go?
Sorry, just please, my apologies. I just want to point out that apparently Keyamo, you can't hear him, But apparently, Kiyamo is saying that there should be 6 regional Supreme Courts in Nigeria. I mean, that's just information. The place is becoming exciting. Paya, please go ahead.
Sir, please, sir, I just have an observation which I want to make quickly, sir.
Please do.
Yeah, we really appreciate your analysis of what is going on there, even though we have more of bow and leave thing.
Okay, thank you.
We would like, as because we don't have light here, we would like as much as possible to listen to these nominees, so that your analysis can come later. Even where somebody we know will be asked to bow later, let us hear what the way he's going to introduce himself or herself.
All right.
So that is just my observation. I say, let me put it across.
Yes. And that's why we actually delayed the phone calls.
Yeah.
Because we want you to hear both from the nominees, the Senate President, and the senators as much as possible,
and as well as to also hear from them.
Thank you very much, Sir.
Okay,
you guys are doing nice.
And I think also you've had some of the you've had the hearings all day since 11 o'clock. So I think that there's been something for those who want to watch the nomination hearings to get their teeth into. And also the previous day.
Yeah, and just also very important, the part that was asked to be thrown away, I just got some update that Dino Milai had asked Festus Keyamo to recite the second stanza of the national anthem, which is what Ahmed Lawan said he should ignore.
But it's used as a national prayer generally, and Bring Back Our Girls, we use it as our opening prayer, the second stanza. So many more people know it than Dino may think.
Let's try and squeeze in one or two more calls. If Keyamo goes on pontificating, we'll go back to him. Hello?
Hello, good evening.
Good evening. Welcome to the public square.
Yes, good evening. My name is Michael.
Okay, thank you, Michael.
Yes.
Is there a trailer bearing down on you?
I think there's one behind me.
You better clear.
No problem.
Okay.
It's such a funny circumstance in this case because it's so I don't know how to put it, that you would call someone to come for an interview and you don't even know where the department you want to employ the person. And you are throwing questions. It's funny. Nigeria, God.
Well, I mean, it's like it's like the cabinet is a playground.
I don't understand.
But when you contrast it to the confirmation hearing of the Chief Justice of Nigeria, which we saw last week, you could see that actually the Chief Justice was asked some questions that his responses didn't necessarily cover him with glory in his response, although he was still confirmed as the Chief Justice of Nigeria.
But at least they showed us the kind of Chief Justice we are going to have.
Exactly. If you ask me, I would tell you that this is a complete misplacement of priority.
All right.
Just a big part there. So thankful for that.
Okay, the line is not very clear, but thank you for.
I thought it was just me.
Okay.
I thought the poor sound was just me.
Hello.
Crackle.
Yeah, that's. Let's see whether we can hear. No. So sorry about that poor quality of the call there.
Hello.
What about your Twitter and your Facebook messages?
Okay, let's see if this one goes through. Hello.
Yeah, good evening.
Good evening. Welcome to the public square.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Sankoli.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think...
Who's calling and from where?
Dewale is my name. I'm calling from Aghogho.
Okay. Do you have lights?
No.
Okay.
I've been listening to you.
All right. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I think the screening, to me, is not an equivalent of job interview. Okay? the president has made his choice. He has done his bag and check on who he wants in the cabinet. So the Senate screening, I just think is not more than an exercise to just for the nominee to have interaction with
the Senate,
the chamber, and then for them to entertain themselves. To me, it's not really about interviewing for job. And
so there is no fail or pass.
I don't think so. It is not, and I don't think we should just put unnecessarily just overreach ourselves on account of we don't know what portfolio they are being pushed to. Even if we know the portfolio, it is not going to add anything to it. And then these are people who campaign together. They were on the same podium campaigning.
In other words, you are happy without a light where you are.
It's not about whether I have light or I don't have light. I'm not even here. I'm not even in a position to listen to TV now. So
So what you are saying essentially is that it doesn't matter to you who is put in charge of electricity, whether the person knows what they are doing there or not.
Of course, it matters to me.
So why are you saying it doesn't matter whether we have portfolio or not?
This screening is not going to do anything on whether we are going to have somebody who is qualified in any position or not. It's not going to do anything because it's not a job interview. It is not designed to be a job interview.
Okay.
The first thing first is even that what is the objective of the thing itself. So I think the objective is not going to be whether to find.
So in other words, what you are saying is that it's just a presentation.
It's just a presentation. That's the way it is. And I'm not going to overwork myself about let them just do whatever they want to do, and then let portfolio be allocated, and let hold each ministry to account. And if any minister is not performing, we will talk, we will shout, we are going to hold the president responsible. He's in charge of the cabinet, he's the head of the cabinet. So everything boils down to him. So what
the chief executive officer.
Just for them to just interact. They have been together, they know themselves, they can ask anybody to bow. Doesn't make anything to me.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you so much. We'll try and take one more, and then first Kiyamo is still.
I have to say that I think he has a point.
Hello, good evening.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to the public square.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Anna.
Okay, thank you. Where is Anna calling from?
Well, I'm on the road anyway.
Okay.
And I want to say a big thank you to you all there.
Thank you.
But I would not agree with the last speaker because I think it's something that concerns us. I remember when I heard about capacity and competency. I thought this time around it was going to be different. And that is my own thought and my own take on this. It is actually a job interview because as it is, we want people who will be able to do the things right. How will it be that we take a hairdresser to come and be the minister for education or something? Does it make any sense? Or a tailor from somewhere? Does it have the competency and the capability of a truth? It is more of management rather than they doing the job. But nevertheless, they must have an idea. They must know what is being done so that when anybody is saying any jargons, they can easily correct the person to say, hey, you there, this is not the right thing.
All right.
So that's my own take on this. I think, one, the president should have actually given portfolio. We should know what they want to do, and they should be interviewed based on what they want to do. And this will show if they actually have the competence and the capacity to do it. And if not, they will throw those people out and bring in a new nominee to be interviewed.
As is done in many countries globally.
Yes, and that is the way forward for a country to develop. It is not that we put somebody there for 4 years and he's not able to achieve anything, and there is nobody scoring.
Okay. People are scoring. I think people are scoring. It's just that the ministers may be able to say, but it's not my fault if they put a square peg into a round hole.
All right. Thank you so much for calling, Anna. Thank you. I think we can try and squeeze in one more, then we'll do Facebook, and if Keyamo is still on, we go back to Keyamo. Hello?
Hello.
Hello, welcome to the Public Square.
Good evening.
Good evening. Can you help us speak up a bit?
This is Mr. Samuel from Shomolu.
Okay, thank you. Do you have lights?
No.
Okay, so you are depending on us, all right.
Please, can you allow us near Pencil Piano?
Okay. All right. Okay. So maybe we should go back to Festus, since many people are actually depending on us to hear what the people are saying.
I have to bow out then,
okay.
I think.
You want to bow and go?
Yes, I bow and go.
They have just 5 minutes
I would just
to go.
want to remind you that the system that we're following is based on what they do in the United States to some extent. And if you notice that President Trump had people who were totally unsuitable for the jobs. I mean, an environment secretary who believes in coal, an education secretary, and so on. The list goes on.
But at least we know what they were being nominated for.
But the fact that they were actually unsuited was exposed. And at the end of the day, politics took over and they were still confirmed, just as we had with our Chief Justice.
And many of them quit or were sacked.
But I think that, in terms of his ministers, I mean, his secretaries of state is what I'm saying.
He has 9 acting ministers.
But what I'm saying is that if we look at the way that they are not actually asking forensic, there's no forensic examination.
Sorry, maybe I can quickly update so that we can, some of the big points Festus Keyamo is making in the last 10 minutes. I'll just run through some of them very quickly. He says the AG's power should be reviewed. We should amend the law to make powers of the Attorney General and DPP subject to judicial review. It is subject to abuse when people accused of abuse are freed. Magistrates should be given the powers to grant bail even in matters involving murder when there is no evidence at the early stage. Every police station should open itself to the nearest magistrate court for inspection. Same with the DPOs. Yes. Nigeria's Supreme Court is the busiest in the world. My first task would be to unbundle the Supreme Court. Some of the cases that go there are frivolous.
Assuming he's going to be Attorney General.
This country is big enough to have 6 regional courts.
That would be a constitutional amendment then. Because the reason why the Supreme Court is busy is because there's an automatic right of appeal. So you don't need leave to appeal, whereas in other cases you have to get permission.
The Senate is cracking up. Let's hear from him directly.
My philosophy of life, I want to put it very simple, in simple language. I don't want to die without making a loud statement to society and for the poor and the downtrodden. I don't want to die. And that is why I've been restless since I was called to the bar. And I'm sure you know that I eventually grew up in front of the nation. Everybody saw me since I was in my 20s. I'm almost 50 now. But every single year, I have been restless in fighting for one thing or the other. And everybody watched me grow. The man standing here, is that restless young lawyer you used to do many years ago that has grown to become a senior advocate of Nigeria standing here before you. So I grew up before your eyes, virtually. And so I have been restless because I don't want to die without making a loud statement.
Time up, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Distinguished Senator Manager, please. Distinguished Senator Manager.
It's necessary answer.
Which question hasn't he answered?
Should I? Yes. 2 minutes.
No, you answer. Yeah.
2 minutes. Yeah. Thank you very much. I was brimming to answer that question actually, because I didn't want to leave here without answering that question. On the code of conduct and its provisions, and vis-a-vis the powers, the so-called powers, like you put it, of the Presidential Panel on Recovery of Property, there's a problem. The problem is that you allow the law to remain in your books. That law was passed in 1984. The law regarding recovery of public property was a decree. And when we now are finished, I'll tie it in. And when we now transited to civil rule, they said all those laws that become acts of parliament And so that law says the president has powers to set up any panel to recover public funds. Let me tell you the difference. The code of conduct is a constitution. The constitution did not, no, hold on, sir, with respect, sir, did not criminalize those provisions regarding the code of conduct. It is that act that now makes it criminal offense. That's the difference. So it's not in conflict. The code of conduct, they will only ban you from public office, they will not send you to jail. But that act now makes it a criminal offense. So I am also the lead prosecutor to the panel at a point. I'm the lead prosecutor. And then the Court of Appeal has actually curtailed the powers now. There's a judgment that the Court of Appeal says you cannot charge anybody to court. You can only investigate. And pass your investigation over to the Attorney General for the Attorney General to make a choice. So there's a Court of Appeal judgment. Anything beyond that is abuse of power. Anything beyond that is abuse of power.
Distinguished colleagues, please,
I did that case. My case at the Court of Appeal. I did that case.
Mr. Nominee, I think you have answered enough on that. Distinguished Senator James Iboru, Manager.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President, seated as chair, the Deputy Senate President, my highly respected colleagues, James Manager Delta South. Mr. President, you can see how excited I am.
You have a good product.
Of course, I am. For obvious reasons. And you know the reasons why. And see, you see me bouncing. Because that is what Delta is all about. Mr. President, the irrepressible Festus Kayam, Lenin sick, and said it all. And he has given good account of his personality, of what he stands for, and of course for what he represents. Mr. President, my highly respected colleagues, the Delta Caucus, of course led by the able Deputy Senate President, he has mandated me to speak on behalf of the caucus. The Deputy Senate President of the Omangeke, distinguished senator, the senator representing Delta North, another lawyer. All the three senators from Delta State are lawyers, and also very senior at the bar. Mr. President, we have come to the agreement, and we speak for the entire Delta State. And between yesterday and today, we have consulted very widely, and the entire Delta State is behind this nominee. Mr. President, my highly respected colleagues, he has told us about who he is. He has used the instrumentality of the law to fight for social justice. He has used the jurisprudence of the law to ask questions about the law as it is and the law as it ought to be. Mr. President, he has said it all. And of course, Mr. President, Festus Keyamo is from Delta State, a proud constituent of the Deputy Senate President. And of course, this is very significant. Delta and Ogun State. Mr. President, my highly respected colleagues, to avoid wasting your time, because it's like the entire Senate is together, that this senator must take, this nominee must take his bow and go. The Deputy Senate President represents him, and that is very significant, my respected colleagues. So, Mr. President, I hereby say that the senior advocate of Nigeria, and when, after listening to him, it is very obvious that we need to separate the office of the Attorney General from the office of the Honorable Minister of Justice. Yes. Mr. President, I move that let the nominee take his bow and go. Thank you, Mr. President, for the opportunity.
Well, thank you very much, distinguished colleagues. I can see Delta is in contention with Oyo. No. What I'm saying, the joke is Oyo State yesterday, the caucus presented their nominee and they started by asking questions themselves. And the nominee did extremely well. That was the judgment. Delta is in contention, isn't it? Yes. Distinguished colleagues, I can see the mood is that Festus Keyamo, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, takes a bow and go. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it.
All right, Festus Keyamo taking a bow just when we thought he was going to be there for a while. But first and foremost, let's tell you that it has been a long day. We don't know if this will be the last one before the Senate adjourns the screening until Monday. But Rotimi.
Yes, we needed to see what happened with Festus eventually, and eventually, I think the process is over. He's living with his entourage now. So I think more or less he has been the most combative, the most exciting of the nominees, given that he's one of the youngest. He's also the most high-profile activist that has been nominated. So he hasn't disappointed in terms of drama. So those of you who have been depending on us to follow this, we hope you are very much satisfied. If you've been waiting for the news, apologies. The special coverage has taken us 1 minute over. So we'll go back, take the news now, and our ads, and then we'll come back to you. I think they may be there till about 7 or so.
All right, so let's take a quick break after the news, and then we will be back with the coverage of the ministerial screening.
More news and information coming up. We'll be back in a moment.
This version of Public Square looks like the never-ending story.
Oh, gosh.
28 nominees screened so far. While we took the news, we told you earlier on that Festus Keyamo had taken a bow. Then Pauline Talent, former Deputy Governor of Plateau State, is also taking a bow. And right now, we have Issa Pantami, who is the DG of National Information Technology Development Agency, former, who is now before the Senate and is being screened. So, Rotimi.
Yeah, Pauline is one of the 2 ex-deputy governors. If you are just joining, let's just do a recap of the breakdown of the nominees. I mean, since we don't know exactly what they are being nominated for, we can only go by what they have been before to give you an idea of who they are.
Right.
So it's 6 ex-senators that have just been senators, 14 ex-ministers, 10 ex-governors. Some of them have been senators, 2 ex-deputy governors, including Pauline Talent, that has just bowed and gone. And in terms of profession, lawyers are at the top, 9 lawyers, including 3 senior advocates of Nigeria, 5 engineers, 3 medical doctors, 1 accountant, 1 economist. In terms of other demographics, 7 women, 5 nominees under 50, including Festus Keyamo, who is 49, 5 over 70, and all the other 33 are in their 60s. We should also add 1 former Army General, 1 former IG. So that's the summary of what we know of all of them. And to be quite frank, they have not been grilled in any way at all. I mean, even obvious own goals have not been addressed. You know, Hadi Sirika says that the national carrier should be revived, and nobody said to him, but hold on, you went all the way to the UK to go and launch a logo and spent tens of millions of naira only to come back and tell us that the logo could not fly and that you are postponing the airline for which you have already launched a logo. I mean, that was an obvious own goal, and nobody said, just hold on there. We need to ask you some questions. I mean, so those kind of things just, just lower your morale and just think, what on earth are they doing there? This idea of, bow and go even being extended to relatives and friends and brothers. Somebody, so I know your brother very well. He's been very good. And on that basis, you bow and go. Someone say, hey, though, you are related to the Senate president, you can bow and go. I mean, I don't understand. And even the legislators or former legislators for which the bow and go thing was initially created for, it doesn't make sense. Because if you've been involved in the legislature, whether at federal or state level, I mean, they extended it to Amechi because he was Speaker of the Rivers House before he became governor as well. But if you've, been a senator, House of Reps member, how does that extend to executive? I mean, executive experience, executive competence that is specific to a particular theme is quite different from a general lagbo, appearance in the Senate. Some of them don't even turn up.
Very true.
In the Senate. If you look at the attendance register, some of them barely turn up in the Senate or in the House of Reps. And that kind of person will be appointed and they will say, bow and go. The person has not even been a competent senator or Reps member.
Yeah, very true. So a lot of stuff going on. I've seen a number of comments on social media. Rhythmi and I were talking during the break. We'll have to take all those comments. Wherever we stop, we will try.
Oh, gosh.
The calls also, too, we'll try. And we also understand you want to monitor what is going on with the Senate. Issa Ali Pantami from Gombe State is the one being screened.
I mean, the lack of lights means a lot of people are depending on radio.
Very true.
To
follow what's happening.
Yeah.
Yes. And something you said about, I think it was IOB who said that the Festus Keyamo's presentation before the Senate will sort of liven what has been generally
Very
called a
boring,
drab event.
Yes.
And even though he had no portfolio attached to him, he did use the opportunity to make some.
In fact, he seized the portfolio for himself. Yeah, Festus just seized the Attorney General and has already started proposing rearranging the Supreme Court. Saying there has to be 6 regional Supreme Courts. And in fact, people like Malami will be listening with alarm that this boy has taken over my position. What are they going to give me now?
Talking about the congesting prisons, the number of court cases, magistrates should grant bail,
police stations should be tied to magistrate courts.
Interesting comments. I'm sure that will form a lot of discussion.
I mean,
going forward.
After all this Festus presentation, I mean, imagine how disappointed he will be if he's allocated to environment
or Ministry of Sports.
and therein lies the fallacy of all this thing without portfolio.
This happened, I remember, also with, we're not saying Festus will get anything, maybe he gets, but I think it was with Dora Akunyili, where people had touted will be Minister of Health, then God rest her soul, Professor Dora Akunyili, and then she was made Minister of Information then, and people had thought with what she did in NAFDAC and her performance before the Senate, she was going to be Minister of Health, but Minister of Education, Minister of Information then, I remember, was what she picked up then.
I mean, just talking briefly of information, imagine if Lai Mohammed is moved to, I don't know, Minister of Finance.
which has been a raging debate so far, yes, who becomes the Minister of Finance.
Yeah, or maybe even Minister of Foreign Affairs.
What happens to Jeffrey Oyema on that list?
Oh, well, I mean, they could move him to, I don't know where, I mean, that's exactly the absurdity of what we were. Yeah. I mean, people will be speculating,
Yeah.
See, if in terms of professionalism, we're even anywhere near, for instance, what they have in some European countries, say like Britain and France, where if you are going to be made permanent secretary,
yes,
you will be an expert in that field, on top of your administrative competency. So, if there is no minister or the minister is not a professional, the permanent secretary and the directors, between them on that theme, we have multiple PhDs. In fact, if you move them to private sector, many of them can run that sector themselves. And if we had that kind of scenario in our civil service,
yes,
then maybe you could even attempt to risk what we are doing now. But in a scenario where even the civil service is made up of paddy arrangement, a lot of nepotism, then on top of it you come and add learner driver, to actually head those ministries. I mean, it is so terrible to imagine that somebody can be made Minister of Education that has, I mean, just look at the someone like Adamu, who came and hinted that the out-of-school children may now be 16 million. And nobody said to him, well, how many schools is that?
Yeah.
How many teachers are those? I remember when the government said, all those figures of UNICEF and UNESCO that it is 13 million out of school. It's not 13 million. It's only 10 million. Immediately, we here on Nigeria Info, we computed it for the appropriate class size.
Yeah.
That's 300,000 classrooms.
Good.
And 300,000 teachers and about 13,000 schools that are needed, for which the teachers just don't exist. That's where the real emergency should be.
Yeah, and that's where the real probe will have been, even though the sort of argument now whether this is a screening or confirmation or no confirmation. So Issa Pantami is still going. Well, he's taking questions. Maybe we'll just still, when he responds to the questions for a while. But I think we can take some comments on Facebook.
Yeah, definitely.
So let me run through Facebook. Number of people who are watching on YouTube and Facebook. I'm going to try and unify the comments as quickly as possible. Someone watching from Port Harcourt, how are you? Thank you for joining our live coverage. Let me start from Sonny Obasi. He says, if national interest is becoming too difficult to define, it simply means that the word doesn't exist. There is no interest that is more above than the Constitution. Celestine Chow says, Nigeria's judiciary doesn't follow court orders. They are following the ruling political party and presidential order. Simple. Dasuki and El Zakzaki should exercise patience till the ruling party's tenure is over. Because comments are all linked to the conversation on Malami. Let me run to Tajuddin Pokpo Balogun, who says, on a lighter note, now that Mr. Rotimi has clarified that Senator Kwayemi Bamidele has corroborated Ms. Ayobe's position, what's going on the Senate is confirmation. Can you kindly edit the caption on your live streaming and your various social media handles?
Including all the TV stations,
which we are looking at.
Every single TV station is calling it a screening,
and even the National Assembly is calling it a screening.
Even the National Assembly is calling, yes.
Nath Israel says a lot is expected from Festus Keyamo as a minister as a younger person. Let's see. Patrick Umiana says
that's a sharp guy. That guy will catch us there.
Intense scrutiny. A valuable nomination, which by God's grace will make him a great ambassador of Delta State. So it appears that a lot of people for Festus Keyamo joined the coverage.
He's the youth. He's the angry youth.
Yes. Keep it up. Knice job, Oguyemi Ogunlere. Keyamo should be asked if the CCB can. Keyamo should be asked if the CCB can ask for the removal of the Chief Justice of the Federation before the trial ever began. I'm trying to understand what it means. I'm from Delta State. Thank you very much, Festus. Thank you, guys. It's just unfortunate that many personnel that he in his mind thinks are not qualified. Keyamo, another comment there. So, Facebook.
All right. I'm not sure that there is much on Twitter. I think most people have been following on Facebook.
Yeah, many people on Facebook. A number of people watching on YouTube, but not dropping comments also too.
Well, HOB Bangbade, he says, engage people like Keyamo in public service. He likes him. God bless Nigeria. Bamidele Olaniran, the Senate is just entertaining us. Our own Wemimo, who is watching, Wemimo says, I feel like Keyamo has been listening to Morning Crossfire.
Oh, boy.
Well, for those who say, let's hear the live screening, we obliged you. Chukwuemeka Kalu, Nigeria is known for wonders, and the above is just one of the examples of those. There are also some people quarreling on our Twitter line. Please stop quarreling. Make your own comments. Stop fighting amongst yourselves. Yeah. Okay. So lots of interesting comments. More on Facebook than on Twitter.
Yes.
I can see some people are trying to call again.
Okay.
So maybe we should
take some calls. So they just oblige you the numbers again: 01277 0993, 01277 1993, 01277 2993, and 01277 3993. So call in and let's hear what you have to say.
Hello.
Yeah, hello, Rotimi.
Yeah, welcome to the Public Square.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm so excited to get through to you this evening.
Thank you.
I've been trying to get through to you guys in the last couple of days.
Thank you so much.
Don't worry, you're going to win. You're going to win the lottery after today.
Okay. Who's calling and from where?
My name is Uche.
Okay.
I'm calling from Ikeja.
All right.
Now, very quickly, Rotimi, you see, I have not bothered to listen to this so-called screening or confirmation or whatever term that we've decided, that we're going by. But just, listen to Keyamo via your station.
Can you adjust your position slightly?
Oh, can you hear me now?
Okay. Just try again.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can, but...
just barely. Go ahead. Let's try.
Okay. So, now, for me, it's what I have from Keyamo.
Can you move a bit and then hold your position?
Hello? Is it okay now?
Yes.
Yeah, just hold where you are. It looks like the network is trying to screen or confirm you.
I'm close to the airport. I can hold that.
Ah.
I think the plane will soon pass.
Okay.
So, now very quickly, Rotimi. Now, what I more like self-praising. And then, Aghogho now seconded that. And for me, look, Rotimi, let me tell you something. Let me tell you what bothers me. Beyond the point of screening and all that, I look at all the people on that list. Which one of them can actually look at the president in the face and say, Mr. President, I don't agree with you on a particular issue. I think we should go this way, or I think we should go the other way. Look at Obasanjo. As tough as Obasanjo was, he had people, the likes of Okonjo-Iweala and all that, who could tell him, sir, the economy will not go that way. I think we should do it this way. Now, let's look at this present administration. I mean, I'm not saying that the president is weak, but for goodness sake, we can compare him to an Obasanjo. Now, in spite of his weakness, which of these people in this so-called list can look up to him and say, let's do it differently? Now, look at, we're all talking about security, insecurity, and all that. He's looking at the economy. Now, with all these people on this list, Rotimi, do you sincerely think that anybody can handle the economy with all the people that you've seen on this list?
Well, it's
you understand?
It's up. It's up to you and other listeners to judge.
No, but that's the truth. It's unfortunate that we're not pointing out this.
There are lots of people calling, but we get you. We get all the interesting points.
These are the things that we should look at.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Hello. Hello. Hello.
Hello, Mr. Aghogho.
Welcome to the public square. Who's calling and from where?
Samuel from Badagry.
Samuel from?
Badagry.
Badagry. Okay. Do you have light or you are depending on us?
I'm Nigeria Info 24 hours.
Hey.
2011.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. You see, Mr. Rotimi, this very list we are talking about, to the exception of that man, what's he called, from Oyo, when they are doing their jokes yesterday, Ajishebi Oyo Larry and Festus Keyamo. I want to tell you, in part of economic, we are in trouble, I'm telling you. Nothing. And in terms of justice, I think if Keyamo can stand and say, I'm a civil society, I'm an activist, he can do well in Ministry of Justice. And for the other man from Oyo State, out of that two, I'm telling you, nothing else. I'm telling you.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, have a nice day, my
Thank you. Okay. All right, let's try and squeeze in one more and try and take the last 10 minutes. Hello?
Hello?
Welcome to the public square.
Yeah, welcome.
Okay, you need to turn down your radio, the volume on your radio.
Okay. I'm Jenkins.
You are Jenkins?
Jenkins, from Satellite.
All right, okay, we got you. Very quickly.
Yeah, I want to, I feel that this screening is just a major jamboree. The people have been personal down, and the people on the Senate, both the Senate, the leadership of Senate, was dictated by the executive. So whatever that happens there is just a rubber stamp. Nothing positive will come out from there, because the senior president and the deputy or the leadership are being, harnessed executive. People we are talking about in the issue of portfolio to enable the senators deliberate on their capability to handle different ministries. You see, that is how it's supposed to be.
So you believe that portfolios should be attached?
Yes, I believe that yes, the portfolio should be attached, so that the senators will be able to hammer on the portfolios one by one. See, the Senate, the minister designate, whether he will be able to cope with the ministry or not. You get the point now? Yeah. So I don't believe in whatever that is happening there. I don't believe in that, because everything is just political for the favor of the executive.
Okay.
That's the way I see it. Okay, I remember during the time of, I can't remember the government then, the era of Obasanjo, whether one of the ministers that appeared before the Senate was also was asked to recite the national anthem, and he could not, and a professor for that very matter, he could not. So why is it that the denominator asked Festus Keyamo or what, to recite it, and the senior president said that it's not a question. What is a question? Okay. When you set exam.
Okay, we got you.
So that is that. And that Keyamo should just be good at the Minister of Information, and that's what I see them is doing to him, and not the Minister of Justice.
Are you sure you mean information or propaganda?
No. That's the way I see it. That's the only way I see that he'd be good at, and not the Minister of Justice.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much. Okay, I think we are coming to. I think they are even going to end at 7. Huh?
Most likely.
Most likely. Okay.
This ones don't look like stretching, even though they're below their target. They were supposed to do 8 today, but looks like they've done just 5. Okay. It doesn't look like they can go 3 more.
Okay. Now, what the last caller was saying is related to something. The Senate president seems to be a bit partial towards the president. I remember when one of the nominees appeared and the minority leader, Tabaribe, said, when this guy was Minister of State, there was no problem in his ministry. We had a fight in Ministry of Petroleum. We had a fight in Ministry of... And the Senate President said, no, you can't say that. Hold on. There was no fight in the Ministry of Petroleum. The President is the Minister of Petroleum. He didn't quarrel with anybody and nobody quarreled with him. And I said, but what of all those squabbles between the NNPC, GMD, and Ibe Kachuku? Were those not quarrels?
And then at some point he will have to grant a press conference. I think he's in the beat weeks having to say, for example, comments that had been attributed to him. Say, I will not be a rubber stamp of the president. And this is the first litmus test for him. Yes. And I guess the jury's out on whether or not he's carried out his duty as chairman of the screen.
He's stamping. He has been stamping since.
I mean, he's trying really hard, but
no, look, even that barefaced denial that there was no problem in the Ministry of Petroleum, everything was very smooth there. The president is the Minister of Petroleum. The president is not being screened or confirmed here. He's not going to turn up. He didn't turn up the last time, and he's not going to turn up here. So even the Senate president has already ascribed that ministerial position to the president, even though the president's name is not on the list.
Very true.
So I'm wondering, how can he say somebody whose name is not on the list is the Minister of Petroleum?
I think they're going to extend beyond 7, but because they've asked Issa Lee Pantami several questions. He hasn't responded to any of those questions yet. There's still another senator going at him at that. But one quick question as we try to bring this session to an end. and Game On resumes. What do you say, for example, they said the night shows itself from the day. We've seen 28 minister designates go before the assembly now. 15
to go.
Okay, 15 to go. 18 have taken a bow. Out of 28, the percentage is not so bad when you go 18 over 43. I mean, it looks really awful.
At the rate we are going,
18 over 28.
The majority will take a bow because we haven't even covered the majority of ex-ministers, majority of ex-governors. There are 14 ex-ministers, 10 ex-governors, 6 ex-senators. We haven't covered all of them. 2 ex-deputy governors. By the time all of them come in, roughly 30 are going to take a bow.
Yeah, that's
without a single comment.
So if you have almost 70% of the nominees taking a bow, what does that say?
So it means that even the appearance is a sham. Because whether it is a screening, a confirmation, an appearance, at least they should make it look respectable by asking some questions that can generate some answers. I mean, look, Keyamo was asked a few questions, and he generated a lot from it. So if those kind of questions are put to people, I mean, not all of them will be as exciting as Keyamo for sure, but at least they are going to say something that either makes sense or does not make sense. So it looks as if we are going to be here on Monday.
Yes, most definitely.
And possibly on Tuesday. They always say they will start at 10. They don't start at 10. We end up starting at 11 in the morning, run until 1. They said they will end at 4. I think they were trying to end today so that they can go on their recess.
But it's almost impossible
It's
now.
impossible because even on normal weekdays, they don't run till 7. And this is a Senate that normally does not sit on Fridays at all. And they are sitting until 7 today. So I think on Monday, they will try and rush it through. On Tuesday, maybe on Tuesday, they will finish. So join us. We are the only radio station doing this wall-to-wall coverage. That's why we are Nigeria Info, the best radio station in the country. So please join us Monday morning, Monday afternoon. If we haven't been able to take your call, go to our Twitter handle at Nigeria Info FM, the top tweet there. You can respond to the question, should candidates know what they are being interviewed for? Should the panel know what they are interviewing candidates for? So the conversation can go on Twitter. You can also tweet at me at Rotimi Sankore and follow the program handle at Public Square NG. Aghogho is also on Twitter at Aghogho Obo. So thank you for sticking with us. Join us for live coverage Monday, Tuesday, maybe Wednesday, and again for another bumper edition of Public Square next Friday at 4 p.m. We have the Lagos state candidates. We are hoping that they will allow us cover it like this. The governor, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, has sent his list to the state House of Assembly for his commissioners and advisors. We hope they will let us cover it like this. If they do, we will bring it to you either live with a retrospective review as well.
All right. Okay, so until you hear from us again, good evening.
More talk, news, and sports after this.